All right, welcome everyone to the Complete Streets Advisory Group Q3 budget meeting plus other things as well. I'd like to get started with icebreaker for anyone that's new to the group. I know that Shub is new. Would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Shub Tucker. I am a planner with city planning here at the city of Pittsburgh. My role is mainly focused on long-term transportation planning and transit development. So I'm happy to join you guys today. And thanks, Jeff and Angie, for everything today and for facilitating.
Yeah, absolutely. And future CSAG meetings, we're going to have Shub provide updates on the comprehensive plan and the way that that might affect our group and ways we can participate in that. So thank you, Shub. Is there anyone else online that's new?
We have in person.
Okay, yes, please.
Yeah, I'm Gina Anderson. I am an AICP, a certified planner. I have a significant brain injury, so I'm still getting used to the fact that I can verbalize always what I want to say. But my background is in sustainable transportation and specifically measures to get people into other modes than cars. So I'm so glad to be here.
Excellent. Thank you for joining. Anyone online? I know Emily's new to the group, and maybe Emily can introduce herself and be presents. Is there anyone else new to the group?
Hi, folks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Surya Lee. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm with Tree Pittsburgh. I'm just filling in for Clara Kitongo, my colleague, who couldn't make it this morning, but I'm happy to be here, and thanks for putting this on.
Perfect. Thanks for joining. Did you want to go through the agenda?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
So thank you all for being here. I just took a quick tally. For those of us online, we've got about 14 people in the room. And then for those in the room, we've got about 10 people online. So this is the fourth Complete Streets Advisory Group meeting. It is intended to be the last in the quarterly series that we talked about with this group when we first got started. So we're continuing to use the name tags because as Elisa and I were just talking about before we got started here, even though we're seeing each other quarterly and we may run into each other, throughout just our work or our daily lives, it's still, we need that friendly reminder of the who's. And I think as our group grows, we're going to be looking for new members to be sort of the ones that introduce themselves and then allow time for them to sort of ingrain with the group. So just some level setting here for the folks that are newer and then for the folks that have been with us for a little bit longer. This slide is titled Meeting Agenda. And what it is it covers the 5 items that we'll be presenting to the Complete Streets Advisory Group today with the theme, the time allotted, and then the presenter. So we're going to be starting this morning actually with a presentation from guest speaker, Emily Provenchaw. Hopefully I said that okay. From Pittsburgh Regional Transit. And what Emily is going to be presenting is some of the initial PRT design for the bus network. It's an exciting plan meant to improve service throughout the network. And they're in the process of doing community engagement right now. So this is her opportunity to sort of present to this group some of those other opportunities for engagement that you guys will be able to plug into or to be able to share with your networks. We'll also save some time for the group to ask Emily questions, but just acknowledging that she's here as a special guest and that there will be other opportunities to engage with PRT on their bus line redesign. Sandwiched within the middle of our events are our presentations on budget, which is meant to be the theme of this quarterly meeting. So we have Brendan Kotiki, thank you. From the Office of Management and Budget. He's here to present on the city's budget process. I sat through this presentation a number of times and I still learn something every single time. And so this is an opportunity for our members to see, learn, maybe relearn how the city builds a budget. That should set the stage very nicely for Jeff Leonard, our CSAG facilitator, to present on the 2025 budget process. So the budget first became available publicly on September 30th. DOMI did not see the draft budget prior to that. So the material that Jeff has put together for us, he had to work pretty quickly to pull it together from the budget. And then we've been having conversations with other bureaus within DOMI for how we will present it here. The things I want to emphasize going into this portion is again that we're talking about a draft budget. And at the end of that portion of our time together, we want this group to think a little bit about how CSAG can participate in the budget process. So as you're sitting through Brendan's presentation and Jeff's presentation, be taking notes maybe or thinking about how you feel about the budget and what you might want to share with the group and what themes or remarks CSAG might want to make to reflect how we are interpreting the 2025 budget. Stephanie Gagne from the mayor's office is going to do a short presentation of updates from our Vision Zero working group. Again, we'll have some time at the end of that section for questions. And then about an hour and a half in, we're hoping that's where we'll be. We'll take a break. For those who are here in person, we did get a cake to celebrate CSAG turning 1, so happy birthday. We'll take a break for refreshments and then we'll reconvene. And I want that last 40 or so minutes together to be talking about what year 2 of CSAG is going to look like. So we've saved some time for that and then also for member updates. I think that covers us pretty well. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to Emily from PRT.
Okay, hi everybody. So I'm Emily. I am the manager of service development, and I just wanted to give you guys an overview of the bus line redesign project, which you've already heard is a system-wide effort to rethink our entire bus network on where and when and how people are moving throughout the region in this post-pandemic world. So just to kind of frame where PRT is coming from, we don't have an additional huge amount of money pouring in to provide more service at this time. We are doing the bus line redesign planning process within our existing budget and within our existing number of bus operators. So really the name of the game with this is how can we better reallocate our resources where our riders need. Instead of giving you guys a presentation on a PowerPoint, I would really love to walk you through our website because I think that our website has been designed so well for interactive engagement and feedback. So buslineredesign.com. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So this is the home page, and best way to get in is to click on one of these 3 I don't know what to call these, but you can click ways to give input, review the draft network, or take a look at our upcoming events. So I'll click on the first one, ways to give input. We want to hear from the public. We launched this website on September 30th. I'm so sorry, I gotta log out. We launched it on September 30th, and our public engagement duration will go until January 31st, 2025. And we have a series of robust public events, pop-ups, public meetings, stakeholder meetings. So when you click on ways to give input, it pulls you into a couple different ways to provide your input. So you can review the entire draft network. You can take a look at your specific route if you want to look at a specific route, and you can look at an upcoming event. I'm going to go back to this page and click review the draft network. It gives a little bit more input and it gives a little bit more information about the project, major improvements we're trying to make. So the major headlines of the project are that we're trying to reflect what we've already heard from the public over the past year. PRT did a lot of public engagement already. We did a market analysis to better understand where people are moving and where they want to go. We heard from our riders. So the main headlines we heard were our riders wanted new routes that connect communities without the need to transfer downtown, and new one-seat ride connections between communities and also to Oakland. They wanted improved reliability. So we've done that, and we've tried to address all of these things. So as I'm going through this list, I can show you later directly in the map how we've done these things. But one point on improving reliability, we've tried to shorten route lengths because we have a lot of long routes in our system today. And what happens is it's like a cascading, a negative effect that happens when, a route hits a delay, the rest of the route hits delays and it exacerbates itself. So by shortening the route, we're trying to improve route reliability. We are also trying to adjust schedule timing throughout the day to better reflect, in the AM peak and the PM peak, how long does it really take to run the buses through these areas, and where do we have congestion hotspots? Okay, let's have the schedules reflect that. Improve access to jobs, health facilities, grocery stores, major shopping facilities. We've taken great care to route the bus routes to get people's places people want to go. Increased transit service throughout the day and on weekends. So this favors our riders that are more dependent on our service. We've accomplished this by scaling back some of our commuter flyers. Commuter flyer routes are the routes that run only in the AM and PM peak periods. So you might have heard of like some of the P routes, P10, P16, P78. We're scaling back some of those. We are keeping some of those in our draft Network 1.0, but in order to increase the frequencies of transit service throughout the day, in the evenings, on weekends, that was one way that we saw, okay, this better matches transit demand because we don't have a lot of ridership on our commuter flyers anymore in a post-pandemic system. We do have more riders throughout the day, weekends, evenings, and so we wanted to kind of reallocate some of those service hours to better reflect transit demand. And then consistent trip frequencies. This is just better communicating to our riders when our buses are going to come. So if it's an every 15-minute service, if it's an every 30-minute service, we're reflecting that in our app, we're in our schedules, so our riders know when their buses will come. And then better use of busways. So this is where PRT is going to take a look at our system and say, why do we have all these stop restrictions? It's confusing to riders. If riders are standing at the busways and they're seeing all of these buses pass them instead of pick them up, it creates a lot of frustration. So in order to increase the capacity of our busways, we're eliminating those stop restrictions. All bus routes are proposed to make all stops. Okay, so just kind of, again, you can click on this link here to review the entire draft network. I'll click on it now. You can zoom in at a granular level and take a look at what we are proposing. It does take a second to load. The way that we've set this up, each of these rows on the left reflects a proposed route, and it will explain to you in the name which routes from our existing network are covered by this proposed route. So what we've done in a lot of ways is knit routes together to make an improved route that is modified in specific ways, like we're adding frequency, or we're making it more direct, or we're rerouting it to connect to new neighborhoods, for example. So along the left, you'll see all of those routes, and you'll notice that the proposed routes either have a D prefix, an O prefix, or an N prefix. The D stands for downtown, so that route would primarily serve downtown. In this draft network, we are still providing excellent service to downtown. We've had a lot of concerns about, oh my gosh, you guys are cutting service downtown. Yes, we have scaled back some of the commuter flyers, but again, we've tried to provide coverage for those routes by knitting together other routes and still providing coverage to those areas. The O routes, these are routes that primarily serve Oakland. And you'll see O routes from the North Hills, for example, the O5 that runs from McCandless Park and Ride, Ross Park and Ride, through Millvale, over to Lawrenceville. It ends in Oakland. So it's an O route. We've got a new O route from the south. You might be familiar with the Route 51 that goes through Carrick to downtown. We are overlaying a new route. The proposed O47 route runs along that same alignment and terminates in Oakland. So as you can see, we're trying to reflect what our riders have told us they want. They want routes that terminate in Oakland. We're trying to provide that and reflect that in this draft. Let's see, the N routes. The N routes are routes that primarily connect neighborhoods. We've got a new route proposal here in the South Hills between Brentwood. It connects Brookline, Beachview, Dormont to Carnegie Station. Again, this route creates a one-seat ride between all of these communities, and our current system does not do this today. So any of these riders would have to go downtown or, in a very indirect way, go out of their way to go back out to these areas. Something special about the system, you might see these little circles throughout the map. These are transit hubs. We're proposing a system of expanded transit hubs to facilitate greater connections. Looks like we have a question, so I'm going to pause.
Hey, Emily, I was just gonna let you know, we're gonna, for the sake of time, wrap up in a few minutes and then move into Q&A. We're at about 15 minutes so far.
Okay, so just want to wrap up the conversation about transit hubs, that each of these circles on the map represents where our riders can make additional transfers that they aren't able to make today. So imagine each one of these places has 4 or 5 routes moving out of it, like kind of in a star pattern. And I guess I will mention improvements to the 28X. In the proposal, you'll note that we're calling it the X20. All of the names are kind of placeholders since this is a draft, but we are pulling the X20 airport flyer out of Robinson Town Center, and we're providing additional routes to serve Robinson Town Center as more local standard bus routes, so that the airport flyer could be more direct and get our riders straight to the airport. So that's all I wanted to show on the map. I just want to quickly go back to show everybody where you can look at if you wanted to take a look at a specific route, you would just click the Find My Route page. As you can see, this chart is organized by existing routes on the left, and then explains whether it's a modified route, a new route, or a discontinued route. We have proposed to discontinue some routes. We have gotten some negative feedback on that. A lot of the routes that are discontinued have extremely low ridership, and we're trying to provide coverage to those areas by modifying other routes. Like I was saying, we're knitting some together. On the right, you can see that we have links for what we are proposing in the draft proposal. I'll just click on one of these, for example, to take you to these pages. We spent a lot of time on these pages. So if you toggle this map to the right, you can see the existing route coverage. If you toggle it to the left, you can see the proposed. We have a summary of changes on the right. We also have all of these documents as draft PDFs that you can print out. We've also printed them out, and we bring them to all of our pop-ups and events. Lastly, I just wanted to cover our robust calendar of events coming up. So today we have our super pop-up at Shenley Plaza from 11 to 4 p.m. We'll be up there all day talking to people. And we've already done, I want to say we've already done 10 pop-ups throughout the region, Wilkinsburg, Braddock Hills, McKees Rocks, Millvale. We have at least 10 more pop-ups to go. And as you can see, they're all scheduled and transparent on this page where they'll be. We have public meetings, so we encourage everybody to attend our public meetings as well. Our first one's coming up on October 24th, and our next one will be in mid-November. That one will be in person. The October 24th meeting is online. So as I said, there's many ways to provide input on the map. Just going back to the map, you can provide comments directly into the map. And the way that you do that is to click this post comment button up here on the top right of the map. You can click the post comment button and you can drop the comment anywhere on the map that you'd like. There's also ways to ask us questions. At the bottom of this summary page, you have to scroll down quite a bit past all of these detailed pages, like learning about our 20% additional proposal. You know, if we have 20% additional funding, this is what we could do. We have a bus stop balancing page, community connections page, micro transit zones page, Oakland connections page, a page that explains the proposed route naming, a page that explains about the transit hubs. Way at the bottom of this page, you can ask us a question and we'll try to respond to your question within a week. So I hope that gives everybody an overview of our bus line redesign project. I guess the last thing I want to say, and then I will take a step back. After our engagement phase is over in January of 2025, we're going to go back to the drawing board, start processing, analyzing all of the feedback we got. And then we will come back to the public with a second draft in spring 2025. Thanks very much, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Emily. Let's move into questions. We have one here from Alyssa.
Alisa.
Alisa?
So kind of several questions together. No one has yet given me a firm answer of what exactly a microtransit zone is. I want to know firmly what that is. How do they correlate to J40 neighborhoods, and how are they equitable to disabled riders, elderly riders, young children, you know, people who rely on fixed network?
Thanks so much for your question. I'm sharing my screen again. We have a specific page about microtransit zones. What we've been able to do through the bus line redesign project, and I'm actually going to drop this direct link into the chat. What we've been able to do is analyze our system, see where we do have equity need, where we have very challenging topography, where we have very tricky road network. We've been able to identify where we think it makes sense to have microtransit zones. So based on our analysis, and what I'm showing on the map right now is a map of the 4 proposed microtransit zones, and the pink areas are an underlay of our equity priority areas. So we did try to align our microtransit zones with our equity priority areas. Additionally, these areas tend to have very challenging topography. They have very dispersed populations, so a little bit lower density. Highlands area.
What is microtransit?
Okay, so sorry, you had a lot of questions, so I was just addressing the equity question first. Microtransit, the way that PRT is conceptualizing microtransit right now is that there will be smaller transit vehicles. We don't have the details worked out as to, okay, what shuttles are we going to use? What is the app going to look like? We don't have those details worked out yet, but we do have a microtransit working group internally, and PRT is working out all of those details. But as of now, All we know is that these will be smaller transit vehicles, and there will be a zone in which our riders can request a ride.
How will this work for low income riders? Do you have people who are disabled working on your transit, I shudder at the thought, as a wheelchair user, I shudder at the thought of having these micro transit vehicles because they're accessible in name only. Do you have an actual disability expert working on this?
Yes, and we are also working with Access directly on the microtransit working group. So we will coordinate with Access, and this will be an accessible service. So, we're
I say this with apologies to Karen next to me. Access is not known to be reliable. How do we get reliable service?
I don't think I can answer that at this time because we really don't have the details worked out, but I can tell you that we're working on it and we fully intend for this to be accessible.
Okay, we got another question here.
Yeah, it's kind of a comment, but Emily, if you can speak to anything I bring up, it won't be too long. So what I found in the last year and a half of really looking at what PRT's been doing, I've found most of their initiatives to be wrong-headed. One example is this, where there's a lot of inconsistencies in what we're hearing, but it's easy to say we're still looking at things. I would say everyone in the room, whether you're with a public agency or you're sitting on this board, dare to scratch the surface and ask the difficult questions, because I believe there's been a lot of ridership lost with some of the changes that have been made in the last year and a half plus. And so it's, and most of the things that I'm hearing in the redesign are not rocket science, like Good Transit in other places always does those things. I would say that one example is the BRT to downtown. I have experience with BRTs, and in order to be fast, a BRT must have three things. One, it's got to have grade separation so that it doesn't get mixed up in traffic. Two, it has to have prioritization at traffic signals. It doesn't have that. And three, it's got to have easy on, easy off. That means platform level with the entrance of the bus. Those make it fast. If it's not, it's another bus line. It's just another bus line without speed. And I feel like the promise of the sexy BRT was like, okay, you're going to get this, so we're going to cut these other lines. So again, a lot of wrong-headedness. And I think the devil's in the details. So please don't be shy about asking your colleagues or other people you know for the difficult answers. What is the ridership? What's been lost? Because it's not, I think, and Jeff, when you said, or it was Angie who said, the rationale for the redesign is improved service. I think that's not the case. So this is my experience working in the field, and I hope everyone will do the difficult thing of asking deep questions.
Thank you so much. I think we have time for one more question on this particular agenda item. Is there anyone online that wants to chime in or have a comment? We can just go online for a second. If not, we can go to Warren.
I just had a question if there was any data on how this would improve access to things that matter, like jobs, locations people want to go. I see that there's like an overall increase, but I was wondering if there's a more granular way to see that. Like, do you get, like, if I click on a spot in the network in my neighborhood, do I see how many more jobs I'm going to have access to, or things like that?
So our website is awesome, but we did not do that. I wish we did. What we've been able to do is we have these key metrics. It's a little drop down on the main page. So we do have numbers for, addressing our three goals. How have we improved service quality and reliability? How have we prioritized equitable service? How have we expanded transit connections? So yes, we do have numbers for that. but we don't have it attached to the interactive map.
Okay, I think that would be something that would be awesome, especially for people like, they're looking at this bus network and thinking to themselves, well, all I know is I can't get to this one place that I used to be able to get to. What am I getting? What's the trade-off there? And obviously the whole point of bus line redesign is changing our trade-off metrics. But I would be curious to see that. I know the Jane thing shows me where I can go, but it would be interesting to see how that could be incorporated into how PRT goes into the next draft, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But I know that might be beyond the scope, but it's a.
So I just want to say, oh, sorry, sorry, I just want to respond to one of his questions. So under the key numbers, I think the biggest highlights so when we did the network, when we evaluated the draft network 1.0, I think that largely we have made some pretty significant improvements just through reallocating our service hours, just by scaling back some of the commuter flyers and redistributing those service hours and adding more frequency to more routes. So what it does is it increases the amount of routes that are 30-minute or better service. So routes that are every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 20, and every 30 minutes. We have increased the number of those routes in our system from only 25 routes to now 43 routes. So 43 routes in the draft network 1.0 have 30-minute or better service. That is a huge improvement. That's actually more than a 25% improvement. And then when you specifically look at the equity priority areas in our system, we have increased 30-minute or better service even more than that. So 32% of residents who live in equity priority areas now have access to 30-minute or better service. And all of that is to say, we have maintained bus route coverage throughout our network. So 99% of riders still have transit access within a quarter mile of their origin point. So yes, we've shifted things around quite a bit. We've tried to increase frequency of many routes throughout the system, especially the equity communities, but we also have maintained coverage. So I think that we have achieved a lot of our goals. We've expanded a lot of community routes. We've expanded routes to Oakland. We still have excellent service downtown. So what we're doing is definitely not rocket science at all. What it is it's just making better. We're better addressing the transit demand. We're better addressing equity. We're better addressing the connections that our riders want to make within our existing resources.
All right, with that, I think we're gonna wrap for the sake of time and move on to the next agenda. Thank you so much, Emily, for spending time with us today and presenting. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you all.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to the capital budget next. Just as a reminder, this is 25 minutes, it includes the Q&A, so we'll move into that. Come on up.
Hello, everybody. As Angie was saying earlier, my name is Brendan Kapikian. I'm the capital budget manager with the city of Pittsburgh. I work in the Office of Management and Budget. My colleague who I just see this video on, David Hutchinson, is also on the call. He's the assistant director for capital and asset management. My stage notes ready to go here. And then as I work through this, use a lot of acronyms, terms that might be unfamiliar to people in here. So if there's anything that is unfamiliar, please just stop and ask a question, let me know, and I'll try to define it in a little more detail. So this slide is titled, "What is a capital project?" and includes some bullets here that try to summarize and as broadly as possible what the city considers a capital project. And maybe as you're familiar, the city adopts annually 2 different budget documents, one of which is the operating budget, one of which is the capital budget. The operating budget concerns itself with things that the city does on a recurring annual basis, things like salaries, benefits, office supplies, things that we expect to be expended within a single year. The capital budget concerns itself with large, multi-year capital improvement projects, construction projects, essentially. Every year, the city adopts a capital budget for the next year and then plans the 5 years after that. Because again, these are large, multi-year projects that we know we're not going to be able to complete within a single year. They do need to be mapped out and considered against all of the other construction projects that the city is looking at undertaking. So in city code, capital projects are defined as something that is used to design, build, restore, retain, or purchase a city-owned asset. So that might be a city-owned bridge, a city-owned street, a city-owned facility. We look at them in terms of cost. So something that is going to cost at least $50,000 could be considered a capital project. Something that is long-lasting also is considered a capital project. So if you look at an improvement that will last at least 5 years as being eligible for capital funding. So if an improvement meets those two criteria, $50,000 cost and lasting for at least 5 years, it's eligible for capital project funding. There's a final bullet here that states that projects financed through debt should have a minimum useful life no shorter than the length of debt service. I'll discuss in a little bit more detail later on but basically when we're borrowing money to pay for a capital improvement, we want to make sure that we're going to have the capital improvement for at least as long as we're paying debt on it. So for example, what I usually describe as my example here is we would not have wanted to finance a computer operating system. So we wouldn't have wanted to have bought Windows 95 using debt and then finance Windows 95 for 20 years. We would be long past using that and then still paying the debt on that and the interest that comes along with that. So this next slide is titled, Where Does the Money Go? It includes a pie chart with a few different categories here and dollar amounts associated with each. The dollar amounts are a little less relevant, but the relative shares of this pie chart are pretty applicable here. So these break down the 2025 proposed capital budget in what are called functional areas. So this in office and management and budget terminology are the broadest categories that we use to break down our capital budget. So if you're looking at the pie chart here, there's a blue category, which is a little bit under half of the pie chart that is titled Engineering and Construction. This is where most of our capital budget dollars go to in a given year. So that includes things like bridges, streets, landslide remediation, traffic signal upgrades, complete streets improvements, all live within this category. So that is 45% of the proposed capital budget for 2025. That's pretty consistent with how the capital budget shakes out annually. That's generally our biggest category. Those are typically the most expensive improvements. A little to the left of that is an orange sliver, or it's really about a quarter of the budget here, or pie chart, that's titled Facility Improvement. But that encompasses all capital improvements that are facilities that might include a roof, so public works facilities, parks and recreation, healthy active living centers. It also encompasses all of the city's park facilities and playgrounds. So everything that is paid for covering those sorts of improvements that get in here is in that orange quarter of the capital budget. Next is neighborhood and community development. That is the gray sliver there. That's about 7% of the capital budget. That provides funding for typically the work that the Urban Redevelopment Authority does. That provides money for community and economic development. That covers things like vacant lot maintenance, development of projects. There's also city planning's public art function also comes out of there. And then moving on downwards is public safety. That's an orange sliver here. That primarily pays for PLIs. That's the Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections, demolition funding. Recently, you can use that for some actual capital P Department of Public Safety work in the last few years, but generally that typically covers landslides. The next largest shade here, or almost next largest shade here, is vehicles and equipment. That's self-explanatory. That's all the city's vehicles, ambulances, garbage trucks, refuse vehicles, anything else that the city owns. And then the orange shade here is called administration and support. That is money that the city provides as a pass-through to generally community nonprofit organizations, and that is typically paid for with the community development grants that the city receives from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. This slide here is titled How to Read the Capital Budget. These are actually 2 pages from the preliminary 2025 capital budget document. So if you're sorting through the document, the bulk of it looks exactly like these 2 pages. On the left-hand page here, there's a table about a third of the way through the page, which includes columns for different budget years. So we're moving on from the current year, 2024, 2025, which is the year that we're budgeting, and then again, projections from 2026 through 2030. There are different rows for the different capital budget fund sources that we use. So these, for each individual capital project, make up the 2025 capital budget and then also that 5-year capital improvement. The rest of the text on this page is largely the project description, what it is, the reason why the city is funding the project, and then the impact that it has on the operating budget. So the simplest way to understand the impact on the operating budget might be, if we're funding a public works facility, what are the staffing that is going to be required for? What is the staffing that is going to be required or needed alongside that capital improvement? And then on the right-hand page here, we break up all of our capital projects into what are termed deliverables. Those are the very specific capital improvements that we do in a given year. So for example, here we're looking at the Complete Streets page in 2025. There are 3 deliverables that fall within that capital project in 2025. So there's streetscape improvements on East Ohio Street. There is the entire neighborhood traffic calming program. And then there are also safety improvements in East Liberty along Negley Avenue. So that then includes a dollar amount for each of those deliverables, what source of funding we're using for those, and the location for those. This slide is titled the capital budget cycle. This is our timeline that we look at in a given year. So there's a series of little squares here that include text that describes all of the steps that occur in a given year. We're pretty simple here. We start the fiscal year at the same time as the calendar year. We're January 1st through December 31st. We're actually already looking at building the next year's capital budget in April of the current year. So we're in October right now, and we've been working on the 2025 capital budget in the Office of Management budget since April. That process starts when the mayor's office issues priorities for the next budget. Those aren't actually tied to any specific project or capital improvement. They're more guiding principles that we look at as we consider projects for the next year. And those are also available in the capital budget document. In May, the Office of Management and Budget issues a request for proposals to city departments, municipal and county authorities, or just municipal authorities rather. I feel like look that one.
Right here with the sentiments.
Okay. Municipal authorities for consideration for the next year's capital budget. So we give departments and those authorities, and actually also nonprofit partner organizations, basically 2 months from the beginning of May until July 1st to submit proposals for the next year. And also during that time, we also perform public engagement. That's typically in June. This year, there were a series of 5 meetings that occurred in those locations where we meet with residents and solicit feedback from residents for what they want to receive. That rotates from year to year. We're not using the same locations every year. We try to shake that up as much as possible. July 1st, proposals are due for the next year. The Office of Management and Budget, City Council, the Controller's Office have a committee that is called the Capital Program Facilitation Committee. And that body rather, meets with departments throughout July and August about every single capital project proposal that we receive. So for 2025, that was about 350 proposals, and we held about 24 meetings to discuss every single proposal that we received for the next year. The Capital Program Facilitation Committee, CPFC, evaluates, scores every single thing that we received for the given year. We prepare a report that is issued the first week of September. That report informs the first draft of the capital budget for next year, which is due on September 30th. So the original or the draft for the 2025 capital budget was actually just issued about 2 weeks ago. That was on September 30th. There's an opportunity for us to refine that a little bit further as feedback and information comes in. The mayor gives a formal address to the city council in mid-November. And then things are handed over to city council and they deliberate, hold hearings with all departments, and they amend the budget and are responsible for adopting it by the end of the calendar year. Now, you referenced on the last slide that CPFC scores all of the capital proposals. This slide is titled, How Do We Choose Capital or Choose Projects? And lists the criteria that we use in evaluating all of our capital proposals for the next year. So these are all criteria that are included in city code. The first one is that we look at projects that resolve a threat to public employee health and safety. The next is that we look at projects that include a clear plan for execution, including site control, project timeline, or professional cost estimate. We're looking at projects that are actually actionable, that have spent enough time in the oven, that we're essentially ready to move on them if they did receive funding. We look at projects that leverage non-city funds demonstrated by the grant opportunity, a grant application, an award letter, or a grant agreement. We're trying to stretch our city dollars even further. So if there's the opportunity for us to stretch the city's money further, we look at those favorably. We also look at projects that either generate operating budget savings or generate new revenue for the city. Then we also look at projects that improve efficiency or effectiveness of service delivery. If we're going to perform a bridge improvement, is that going to help our residents? And that's really across the board for all city projects. They can be for playgrounds, parks, anything. We look at projects that improve the quality of life for city residents with low to moderate incomes. We look at projects that have documented support from residents, elected officials, or other stakeholders or users of capital improvements. And then finally, compliance with adopted plans. If something is included in an adopted planning document, that's also looked on favorably in our scoring. There's a table here that breaks down in more detail those criteria. This is actually how we score them in the capital budget or the capital program facilitation. This is again titled, How Do We Choose Capital Projects? Like I was saying in the last slide, all of those criteria are weighted. So safety is weighted more heavily than compliance with adopted plans. So that list that I described in the previous slide is from weighted most heavily to least heavily. And then finally, there's a few different sources that we use to fund our capital projects. I'm going to look at my stage notes here so I don't forget anything. There's a lot of detail for these. The largest source that we use for funding capital improvements are called municipal bonds. And this is debt. This is, if you think about it like your household budget, this is taking out a car loan to purchase a car. And they function basically the same way. There's a term of, for city government, we typically look at a 20-year term. So when we issue debt that typically is paid off over the course of 20 years, and we pay interest back on those loans. Municipal bonds are beneficial for the city because they typically have a lower interest rate than the private sector does. And bondholders are typically interested in having city debt because the interest that they get off of our debt is exempt from federal taxes, and it's usually exempt from state taxes too. In Pennsylvania, it's exempt from state taxes. And it's considered for people who invest in the city who own the debt to be really, really, really safe because we put our full faith and credit on the line, which basically means that we will do whatever it takes to pay back the debt to our bondholders. We will raise taxes if need be to make sure that we meet these financial obligations. So for people who are looking to invest in the city, this is basically considered to be the safest debt that is really possible. There's what I referred to earlier as the Community Development Block Grant. This is a grant that the city receives annually from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's considered an entitlement grant, which is in the sense that we don't need to apply for it competitively each year. As long as the federal government allows the program to exist, basically as it's currently structured, we get the money annually, even if the amount of money that we receive each year is not consistent. We've received less money year on year, basically since this program has existed since the mid-70s. Typically now that's around 12 or 13 million dollars. And then also for context, when we issue municipal bond, that might be anywhere from $50 million to $70 million. So the Community Development Block Grant recently is a much smaller share of our capital improvement. We try to treat it as such. And it also comes with strings attached on how we spend that money. We need to use it furthering if it's for the city's low or moderate income communities. So that might be geographically a low to moderate income area, or that could also be what's called Dave, I'm blanking on the term here for a site improvement where it doesn't matter where the improvement is located, but as long as it's furthering that specific community, that it's
Yeah.
easier to be.
Yeah, there's I think 6 or 7 entitlement communities.
Yes, thank you. There's pay as you go, which is just money that we're taking out of our own pocket and using to pay for capital improvements. So going back to the car note reference, this is the equivalent of paying for the car out of pocket with cash that you have, your own savings, versus taking out the car note. That's also typically, understandably, a much smaller amount than we might have in municipal bonds in a given year, just because it's more challenging to save up money and pay for things out of our own resources. That might be $10 million, that might be as low as $6 million. I think in my time with the city, the highest amount that we were able to pay for in a given year out of PAYGO was about $20 million, and it's generally a lot less than that. And then the last bullet here is just called other, which is literally anything that doesn't fall into any of these other categories. So that includes federal transportation funding from the Transportation Improvement Plan. That includes our other sources of HUD funding that we get other than CDBG. That includes the county regional asset district. That includes competitive grants that we go for in a given year. It's just anything else that doesn't fall into any of these buckets. So thank you, Jeff, again for the time check.
Yeah.
I had some other slides here that go into more detail on these. I might reference them depending on questions that we have, but I'll pause things here.
Perfect.
For questions.
And just so everyone knows, this slide deck is going to be online. If you have any further questions, you can email me and I'll route them and get the information for you. So let's do about 5 minutes of Q&A with Brendan. Anybody have a question related to the budget process? Eric, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Eric from Bike Pittsburgh. Thanks for the overview. I'm curious, we're this advisory group. We're only a year old in this iteration. Happy birthday, everyone. So what do you guys think is the best place and time of year and way, I guess, for this advisory group to, advise the capital budget process?
So again, this is new. In the past with partners, we've gone as far as including representatives actually in those discussion meetings that I referenced much earlier. So we're awkwardly at the end, or not at the end, but kind of at the end of the first draft of the 2025 budget. So without giving a specific answer, I would say that we have many potential paths that we could take for the 2026 capital budget and how this committee would plug into evaluating and considering what is meaningful to include in next year's budget.
Yeah, and we currently have engagement open right now as well in between this preliminary budget that was released at the end of September and the mayor's final budget in early November. On our engage page, which I'll drop in the chat, you can link directly to the two draft budgets, but there's also a budget simulation for both the operating and capital budgets. Do you mind if I share my screen actually? It might be easier.
Yeah. Oh. I guess I'm just wondering how we can formally as a committee, the next year's budget, like best inform it someplace in that, circle graph that you have.
Yeah, and the surveys are really powerful too. We take those pretty seriously. We have to close them because we have to be able to process the information, get it to the departments to inform their proposals. So this happened, as Brendan pointed out, in June. But it's usually open for 4 or 5 weeks in June, and it's an opportunity to talk about what's specific to your community that you want to do. There's a next page that allows you to get into more detail. And you can also, without completing a full survey, always drop a pin on the capital project idea map. In addition to that, Brendan and I were just talking about this earlier. For the rest of the process, it gets really important in December for council to hear from constituents on what's important to them. That's when the budget is in their hands. They can do amendments to it and they pass the final budget that takes effect in January. So during that time, I wish there were public comments at the individual department budget meeting level, but there's not. There's kind of one meeting for all public comment on the budget in general. But they'll release those probably in the next few weeks, like the times for all those meetings.
Okay, excellent. I think we have time for one more question.
Does anyone else? Oh, I was just curious. I know with El Peduto, they used to have, capital budget forums that were open to the public. Do those still happen with under Mayor Gainey?
So they've been reformatted a little bit, and then there was arguably during the COVID-19 pandemic, we switched them to virtually for a couple of years, but for the last 2 years now, they have been combined with operating budget meetings. So they still occur, they just cover the city's entire capital budget, or the entire budget, rather than just the capital budget. So this year we had 5 meetings that happened. I think they were all in June this year. So there were 5 meetings, 4 of them were in person and 1 was virtual. Or it was 5 meetings that were in person and then 1 was virtual. I might be off on the numbers by 1, but we do still have those formalized meetings that occur in the summer.
Would it be possible for next year to make sure that there's a CSAG representation at those meetings? Let us know in plenty of notice to attend and whatnot.
Yeah, we'll definitely make sure we engage with our neighborhood services when those meetings are planned for next year's capital budget.
Jan, you're right on time.
Here I am.
While we move into Jeff's presentation, I thought, can you maybe just give us a little bit of a summary of the outlook of the city's capital budget and operating budget this year? Something that Domi has been repeating over and over is that we know that we're going into lean years. And actually, I think it worked out sort of nicely with PRT's presentation at the beginning of this session, because the common theme between PRT's network redesign and the city's budgeting process is that we're going into some lean years now. And so all of these questions are good. But we're talking about or thinking about how do we use our existing resources most efficiently? How can we make sure we're stretching our dollars as far as possible?
So check in on what I know, just the capital budget.
Yeah, while Brendan's looking that up, I'll say for capital, the bond funds, we're going to face a little bit of a cliff, which is actually good news. We have some debt that we're retiring in 2025, 2026. I think 2027, we have a dip where we have some more room, and we're borrowing less. We're paying less in interest on that debt, and hopefully that means more PAYGO, which is really important to this committee. A lot of what the Complete Streets work, a lot of that can only really be paid for with PAYGO. That's just because of the nature of the materials that are used. We can't be in debt for 20 years for roadway paint and things like that. Some of the bigger cement-based projects we can, but for a lot of the traffic calming and the neighborhood improvements you all want to see, those need to happen with PAYGO. So we're a little bit short for the next 2 years on PAYGO as well. The operating budget's feeling a pinch. They're cutting a pretty close margin in terms of just the day-to-day paying of the bills and making sure we have enough on reserve, making sure we're not paying too much of our total budget against debt. They're really fine-tuning that to get us through the next 2 years, but that means there's not going to be a ton of extra PAYGO.
If Dave touched on the constraints with PAYGO, for the bond funding, I think this slide here, which is titled Municipal Bonds in the Budget, is pretty relevant. And this is an illustration of how the capital budget feeds into the operating budget. So in our home rule charter, we're required to have a balanced budget. That's just the metric that we've set by law for ourselves. We also have in our city code a provision that states that our debt service, the amount of money that we're paying on those bonds in a given year cannot exceed 12% of our general fund that's operating budget expenditures. So given those two things, you might think, well, we have all of this need for capital improvements. Couldn't we just issue hundreds of thousands of dollars in municipal debt? Well, you are constrained in that you would need to trim them backwards by either cutting services or increasing taxes to make sure that you are within that 12% for debt service and also maintain the balanced operating budget.
All right, wonderful. I think we're gonna close this chapter. And again, if you have any questions, follow up with me and I can get those answers for you. Thank you so much, Brendan and Dave. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Come forward to the part of the budget. That deals with double. There we are. Okay, so the title of this slide is Complete Streets Advisory Group Preliminary Budget 2025, presented on October 16th, 2024. There's 4 images of various work that DOMI does in the city: paving, improvements to intersections, traffic calming, and sidewalks. The goals of this presentation, this slide, the title is the goals of this presentation, bullet number 1. We are going to overview the 2024 complete projects and the 2025 funding for DOMI programs, program areas, including sidewalks, traffic calming and safety, signal and bridges. And the second goal of this presentation is for the CSAC members to discuss their participation and we can brainstorm what that might look like. If you have any ideas afterward, send me an email. The title of this slide, this is a critical sidewalk gaps. This is an intro to the program. The primary goal of this program is to develop safe and accessible pedestrian connections to essential community resources such as schools, transit stops, business districts, and parks. There are 1,300 sidewalks in the city of Pittsburgh, and about 83 miles are owned by the city, and that's about 6%. So in 2024, we completed 12 projects, which is approximately 2.1 miles of new or restored sidewalk. The title of this slide is 2024 completed project locations. There's a map of the 12 different projects in Pittsburgh. 8 of the projects that we completed this year were in J40 communities. 2 of those projects were on high injury network, and those same 2 projects were both in J40 communities and on the high injury network. Here is a summary of the looking forward. The title of this slide is 2025 projections related to sidewalks. Capital budget funding in 2024 was $1 million plus $400,000 in CDBG grant money for a total of 1.4 million. In 2025, we're looking at 700,000 from the capital budget, another 750,000 from DCET grants for a total of 1.45 million. There is going to be some unspent funds due to construction, the way it unfolded this year. So for a total, we're going to have 28.6, an increase in program funds, 28.6%. In 2025, we are projecting that we are going to be able to accomplish 8 to 9 projects funded off of the city bonds. 2 projects are going to be funded through TCED money for an approximate 10 to 11 projects or 2 miles of restored or new sidewalk. How do we prioritize? We prioritize by looking at areas with 0 or poor sidewalk, those areas that are around streets that have safety challenges, J40 communities, high pedestrian usage, and public support. So now we're going to be moving into a look ahead for traffic calming and safety and traffic in general. So I'm going to pass it over to John Stevens from the Traffic Bureau.
Hi folks, Sean from Domi Traffic, a lot of familiar faces in the room. And my primary role is managing the traffic calming and safety program. So most of you are familiar with calming and safety. Calming is really looking at reducing vehicular speeds and or volumes on streets, where traffic safety is trying to improve roadway conditions for vulnerable road users, primarily at intersections for pedestrians and bicyclists. The goal of this program, again, is increasing safety and comfort of travel by all modes and promote pedestrian, bicycle, and transit use. These reinforce and strengthen our city's mobility principles, and we do this in a slate of different tools, including speed humps and tables to raise crosswalks, or types of vertical deflection. And we also do horizontal deflection, which includes those pedestrian refuge islands, traffic circles, and chicanes. Looking at what we did in 2024, we did a total of 13 projects that are constructed as of today. We've done over nearly 70% of those in J40 neighborhoods, and 40% of these 13 projects were on the high injury network. We are going to carry over about 5 or 6 projects into next year due to utility coordination and other paving efforts. So our goal was to do at least 20 traffic calming projects for this year, but again, we have them designed. We're just going to carry them over into construction next year. There's a map showing where all of these were located in the city, and if you do want more information on the specific projects, there's an engage page for each of these. Looking a little bit at traffic safety and mostly focusing on pedestrian safety improvements, we did a total of 8 projects. Most of these were quick build paint and bollard installations, and then we did 1 hardscaping project. 3 of these projects, or nearly 40%, were in J40 communities, and over 60% were on the high injury network. The big one I want to highlight, that's just sort of an outlier, is the Penn Circle 2-way conversion. Was a joint project with URA, which was a pretty large streetscape improvement project and 2-way conversion. We did a walking tour there in August. I think some of you were on that. It was a great tour and a really great project, just looking to showcase. Looking into 2025, our biggest goal is sort of actually rebranding, as we've adopted Vision Zero as an initiative. We sort of want to rebrand what is traffic calming as Vision Zero implementation. And so that is like my primary goal, is implementing projects that are with the goal of reaching Vision Zero. So our budget for next year is actually the same as what it was in 2024. We do have over $1 million in that PAYGO money, like OMB had mentioned. In looking at our projections for 2025 and project selection, we're really going to break this up into 3 different buckets, which I'll explain more in the next slide. But But the goal is to increase the number of projects to be delivered for next year, even with the same amount of money. So our draft framework for how we want to select projects is to really scale up the benefits of the neighborhood traffic calming program by expanding it to tackle traffic safety issues on all city-owned streets. So no matter what the typology of the street is, we want to be able to do some meaningful calming and safety improvements on that street. So there's a table here at the bottom that illustrates how we propose the budget being broken up. And we'll start with the three sort of project implementation buckets, which the first being corridor safety for projects that are on the high entry network. An example of a project that we did in 2024 is the Greenfield Ave traffic safety corridor. And those are sort of larger cost projects that require a multitude of needs based off of the street typology. So we try to do spot speed control as well as those targeted intersection improvements. And so that comes with a bigger dollar amount, meaning that with our budget, we can basically do one of those for about 1 mile of length. Still looking to do our traditional neighborhood traffic calming projects with about 8 of those spread across the city, and then really upping the amount of intersection safety projects for 2025 with doing the goal of doing 17 of those, what we're calling tier 1, which are those temporary measures that include pavement markings and flex posts or bollards. And then we also want to be hardscaping older projects that were in those tier 1 and making sure that after the useful life ends for those temporary materials, we follow through with concrete and hardscaping. And then we do have some budget allocated for some design support to do a lot of just the basic designs for the calming program. And then also doing data collection and construction management and inspection, because we do have a pretty small team. It's me and about 1.5 engineers managing this. And so we sort of do need a little bit of support in those two realms. And again, a little bit more about the framework. We want for these project selection, it has to be a city road. At this time, we're not doing projects on state or county owned roads for the calming and safety program. We're identifying them by the high injury network, our neighborhood traffic calming request dashboard, which I think many of you are familiar with, based off of crash history, 311 requests, and any DOMI or neighborhood plan. We always want to be coordinating with street resurfacing and utility work, and so we'll be trying to be prioritized as we do project selection, because that does save us a bit of money of not having to include paving in our budget for these calming projects and rely on our repaving program and sort of meet the two together to deliver the best project that we can. And a little bit on project size, we don't want them to exceed $150,000 for a 2-year time frame. We want this to be from planning to construction within 2 years to really get those improvements out on the street. And then always, trying to meet or really exceed the Justice 40 initiative and making sure that we have over 40% of projects be for the areas. We've met that target in a lot of the projects are in the program for 2024, but we want to continue to do better in 2025. A little bit on signals. This is a little bit out of my realm, but most of you know that DOMI is responsible for maintaining the traffic signals, 600 or so of them throughout the city. It also includes school zone flashers and pedestrian beacons. So we are routinely replacing and upgrading traffic signals on an ongoing basis. In 2024, we did 11 signal projects. The bulk of those were actually in the central business district downtown, improving some of the pedestrian push buttons. We're having audible push buttons and those countdown timers for pedestrian crossings. And then we did a couple capital budget signals where we did a complete intersection upgrade with all new traffic signal heads, those push buttons. There's also new street lighting at those intersections as well. And those are in Brighton and Jacksonia, or Charles Street, Perrysville, and Black and Negley Avenue in Again, exceeded the J40 community, goal, and also all of these were on the high injury network. Looking at 2025, we do see a pretty big increase in funding, and that's because we have a lot of large projects coming online, including the Liberty Avenue HSIP project, which stands for Highway Safety Improvement Project, in Liberty Avenue from Heron Bridge to 11th Street downtown. Will be a road diet, so we'll have one lane in each direction with single turn lanes at intersections with all new signals, street lighting, removing a lot of those street trolley poles that are there. There's an engaged page that has a lot more information than what I'm telling you. And then we're also doing the Frankstown Avenue Signal Improvement Corridor Project, which was identified in the Homewood Mobility Plan that Dillon Planning led. We got some federal funding to do a completely new traffic signals along that corridor, as it is the primary transit, business, and pedestrian corridor in the Homewood neighborhood. And then we are continuing to work on capital budget signals on those one-offs across the city from previous funding years. Okay, back over to you.
Yeah, all right, yep, okay, so I'm gonna talk briefly about bridges. This program is pretty self-explanatory, the maintenance of and inspection of bridges. The title of this slide is Bridges, and there's a photo of the Charles Anderson Bridge. So looking forward to the preliminary budget in 2024, we had 39.6 million. In 2025, we're looking at 11.5 million. That's a 71% decrease in funds. But the thing to keep in mind, as Brendan pointed out, these larger projects are multi-year, so funds are available for projects that have already been identified. And there's no new funding for new projects, but there is funding to continue to develop these existing projects. So you can see that breakdown over here on the right. The title of this slide is 2025 Street Resurfacing Estimates. In 2024, we had 16.9 million in funds for street resurfacing. 27 miles were completed in 2024. That's what we're looking at right now. We also restored 12 concrete, brick, and blockstone streets. In 2025, there's going to be an increase to 20.3 million, which is a 20% increase over 2024. And 38% of just as a note, 38% of the city's capital budget funds go to street resurfacing. So we put a lot of capital investment into street resurfacing. Operating budget.
I'll take these slides and I'll try to move them quickly. So the operating budget, again, is about people and not projects. In the operating budget, DOMI has one new position proposed, and that is an Intelligent Transportation or ITS Technology Manager position. That's a position that would sit with the traffic group and would support our BRT, smart spines, and other high-performing intelligent traffic signal projects. However, we do hope that in the next version of the budget that gets presented to council, that we will see additional DOMI staff added. We are hopeful to see this because in that next draft budget, we're going to be submitting our right-of-way permit fee schedule. So DOMI has permit reviewers and inspectors who are responsible for reviewing every activity in the public space. We're proposing to modify fees to better capture the level of review and inspection that we need to make sure that this permitted activity is in line with construction standards, that safe passage is provided through work zones, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll present both the fee schedule and then the additional staff positions together to council. And so hopefully in the next version of the draft, we'll see those additional positions, which are paid for through those changes to the right-of-way fees. Just an idea of those positions that are not in the budget today, but that we hope that you will see in the next version. plan review positions. So somebody who can do more technical review for development projects. One who can do the same for utility projects. We don't actually have anybody within DOMI right now who's reviewing utility plan from a site plan perspective. We're reviewing them when they're closer to moving to construction. We want somebody to be involved earlier on in the process for better coordination. We're also hopeful that we're going to establish a code enforcement and inspection team. Right now, DOMI has 2 inspector ones. These are the folks that are out there proactively identifying permit violations or unauthorized closures of our road or sidewalk. This is pictured here. It's a major accessibility concern for us when people close the sidewalk without permits or without proper traffic control. We see that these code enforcement teams and a supervisor would really be, the boots on the ground, eyes on the street to make sure that these issues get resolved. And we've done some, as part of the budget process, we have to be able to tie positions to, their ability to bring in permit fees to cover costs. And we do believe that if we can get more proactive in identifying unpermitted activities, that through compliance will bring in more money through the city, which doesn't involve us having to touch our fees necessarily. So compliance means more people getting permits, means more, money coming into the department, means those positions then can exist and be filled to administer the process in a way that we can hopefully start to see better management of our public space through the permits that our department issues.
So just some summary based off of this presentation. We had 44 projects completed that we presented in this presentation. 59% of them were in J40 communities, so we exceeded the goal. 52% of them were on the high injury network, and 32% of them were both in J40 communities and on the high injury network. In 2025, there are, Angie, do you want to?
Yeah, I think just restating earlier that, a lot of what is in the 2025 budget, you'll see, local funding for some of our programs. And then you'll also see projects identified and funded through grants. So in our Complete Streets bucket, I think there's 3 items in the budget. 2 of those are grant funded projects, East Ohio and Brownsville Road. And the third is our traffic calming, soon to be rebranded Vision Zero budget. So, while our overall budget is something in the realm of $50+ million, a lot of that is sort of tied up in, because it's obligated through grants or specific funding sources. There's not a whole lot of, discretionary space in our budget for selecting projects. And so, part of the work of this group, I think, is for you guys to understand how much of our budget is set aside for those larger, pre-identified obligated projects versus where we can maybe get more efficient within our program budget, those local dollars that we have through traffic calming, sidewalk, and paving to install smaller projects that can still be very impactful.
All right, let's take a few minutes for some questions. Anybody have any questions related to the budget specifically or DOMI? Morgan?
Is there any money currently being budgeted for some of these traffic calming projects are getting to be a couple years old now? Oftentimes, if they're done with like paint and bollards, which can be pretty effective, that paint and those bollards don't last through the general abuse they receive. So is there any money that's being allocated specifically for maintenance or kind of rebuilding some of those projects?
Yeah, so here where Sean was presenting, there's 2 tiers. There's kind of the temporary first tier, which is paint and bollards, and then the second category is hardscaping, which would make the changes more permanent with concrete or something of that nature. So we are addressing that and moving in that direction.
So rather than replacing bollards, looking to more hardscape, more projects.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we do continue to have maintenance funds and positions that do go out and refresh pavement markings or reinstall bollards that have been knocked down. It's just with the new Vision Zero framework, we're going to look for up to 2 projects that were existing, constructed today, quick build, that we can harden under Vision Zero programming.
So something like Stanton Avenue would go from being bollards everywhere to actual hardscape stuff in the next phase.
Potentially, yeah, those are the types of projects we would be looking to harden through Vision Zero.
Excellent. Okay, let's go online to Eric.
Hi, yeah, apologies for asking a question earlier that I think is literally a agenda item. I don't know if we're at that part of the agenda, but my question is, like in relation to how this committee could influence or, or I'll say advise the budget as we're an advisory group. I heard Angie talk about, for instance, needing these new staffers to help with that, which I agree with. Personally, I see all the images you showed earlier of, construction blocking sidewalks. I see that constantly all over the city. I mean, is it appropriate for us to, write a letter of support for something like that? Or how could that work, for this group to make sure that those things that you guys are looking for actually, make it through the budget process?
So this is a fantastic place to be, at year 1 of CSAG, is we're asking how this group can actually influence city process. So from DOMI's perspective, we have attempted to sort of show you guys where we are. And I want this group to think about, what are our priorities for complete streets? Are there, understanding that there's not a lot of money available, and that the capital budget has to fund all aspects of city services. How does this group want to sort of weigh in on the draft budget? It can be through a letter from CSAG that maybe responds to this. It can be through public. I do believe that there is public hearing through the council budget hearing.
Formal hearing, yes.
Yeah, but that's a little bit later in the process. I think hearing from this group is really powerful, and DOMI being able, and OMB being here today, just listening is important. So really welcome, your questions or your thoughts on what we've shown you today.
Excellent. One more question and then we'll move on. Go ahead.
This is kind of in the weeds a little bit, but in terms of development of future projects and budgets, how onerous would it be to try and bake into some of the projects a collaboration with Duquesne Light to underground overhead utilities?
That's being really proactive in planning. Yeah. I think it's possible. I mean, I think that's the direction we want to go, right? Is, every year I think we have a better sense of what projects we'll be doing earlier on in the process. So when Sean presented how DOMI's proposing to allocate that $1.4 million among multiple traffic calming areas, that's the first time that we've sort of broken out the budget at this stage. We haven't identified the 17 or so projects, but we at least know the types of projects and the number of projects we will be implementing. So I think, as we get better and earlier, opportunities like that become things that, are tangible. Whereas right now, I think we can acknowledge that, except for the really, really big projects, multi-year projects, we're not able to be as proactive as we would like to be for some of that utility coordination.
All right, excellent. Angie, what are your thoughts? Should we?
We're running low on time, so we did have one more presentation from Stephanie, but I want to continue the dialogue with the group. And so I'm going to recommend we stop and take a little bit of a break.
Okay.
And then come back. We can continue this discussion and just open it up and talk more about the group as a whole.
And member updates.
And member updates, yeah. And we'll find another time for Stephanie to present Vision Zero updates. One of the things we want to talk about is the format of these meetings and the time we have allocated for them. So I think we're we're learning that we use the time that we have quickly. So we may be thinking about things like meeting more often than quarterly.
Do you want to have the cake and then do member updates? Or
Let's break. Let's do the cake, and then you and I can start cutting it, and while people use the bathroom, et cetera, and then we'll come back.
Yep.
So, yeah, we got a cake for CSAC turning 1. Thank you for those who have been here. And yeah, we're continuing to grow. So, do you want to bring it on?
Sure.
We'll show people.
Yes.
The vehicles.
Yes, and it's local, and it's on a street where we're doing a project, East Ohio Street, so.
Try to carry it around like my baby.
What's the bakery?
We got it from Prancel's.
Oh.
Yeah, and East Ohio Street is where we're currently doing a streetscape plan.
How long did we close the sidewalk?
They're so proud.
We'll take a photo for your scrapbook. Let's take a break. Jeff and I will cut the cake and have it plated for you. We'll see you guys in 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes.
Ordering any sort of.
Please drop a slice in the chat.
Hey, Gloria.
I'm the,
I talked to her.
Yeah, and then I also want to be fine. What you do is
Nice.
On my future projects, largely what they're doing, we had a revision of the web tour for
like, you're never gonna get a meeting.
There one person showed up from that showed up after finally, but did all of the like.
At least you guys like have those partners like gate for those infrastructure changes. Services, but
Why did the city of Mark?
but yeah,
Like, oh, perfect time.
Like a 5-year cutback.
Showing up like.
but like all the other neighbors are. I also work on.
Dan Fair.
Connecticut, Long Island, Eastern New York, they go to. Doing great company, but
I've been listening to the car. I think the
they have.
We had Derek.
I've been doing the, I'm upstairs.
I would love that. I actually really need to do
Yeah.
that. Would you mind just I don't let me like.
They have a,
I think we've got plating.
instead of being 15. Yeah, I mean, you gave Mike over the years, he made a lot of, because there are. So. Yeah. Stay, like, if your goal was to optimize profitability.
I'm so too long.
Short term.
Whoa.
The whole not, what you care about is how much money you spend. Fine, because
There were, Fire that had the whole. Yeah.
Thanks for your explanation. Your version.
It's a lot of shit.
You could go to, you could just go on the place, right? You ready?
Yeah.
What's interesting is like 15 feet. You said it all.
And then by the end, like,
It's a different.
like feral. Like
Just have an arbitrary rule where they want to cut down every single.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I just got back. Some of the best trees in the village.
Yeah, we have like.
I'm sure you.
Thank you.
Like.
As soon as you get like. So the highway.
Morgan, you got some?
Yes, I did, thank you. The tree cover just disappeared.
Craig? Maybe nothing happened during our
Line is on the side of the tree. And no one stood up to them.
How are you doing? How are you?
Or no one could stand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty sure there's Duke Energy.
I didn't know you wanted it to occur with available and then you're like, I
It's one of the largest for-profit utility companies like ours. So.
Here, where everyone's thinking like.
I think I've never had them.
How is it?
Good save, yeah. Yeah.
Not keeping up with you.
Yeah, good.
See. Like things are kind of getting.
We have a couple of you too. Okay, that's touching. It's just like what I, sorry.
I just know.
Oh, everything too short, so came up.
Got some cake? I'm all right.
Yeah.
Joy. Do we have any members who want to share any updates? Now's the time for you guys to tell us about any work that you might be doing that could be good for the group,
Online as well?
online as well.
I can kick off. Craig Kuchek, I work at PRT. So I've been kicking off a program called the Transit Access Improvement Program, which seeks to use some funding we have to build sidewalks and other transit access improvements like that. So initially we're looking outside the city, since there are really great needs across the county and they don't have the capacity or funding to do these things themselves. It's really difficult for us to do that because we have no jurisdiction over almost anything. So we'll be looking for partners in the city, especially as the bus line redesign moves forward and bus stops might move and things like that, for ways to improve access to those bus stops. So just wanted to put that out there. Good opportunity for us to collaborate going forward.
Thanks, Craig. Anybody else? Okay, Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick shout out. There's several people on this committee, including Elisa from Access Mob and PRT or PP, sorry, Pittsburghers for Public Transit and Domi and others who we just finished our inaugural week without driving in Pittsburgh. And it was a really great event. We got the mayor and Ace Inamorado to show up to a press conference as well as several other events throughout the week. So just want to put that out there for those who maybe missed it. It's a really great opportunity to get involved and show what it's like to make sure to show how people, can live without a motor vehicle in Pittsburgh. And thanks to everyone who participated. I also should mention AARP if you're in the room.
Colleen's here.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Colleen. Yeah.
You beat me to it. I was gonna do that, so thank you.
Good partnership from the 4 groups that were involved and then the many groups that joined on to co-sponsor. I think some of whom may be part of this group as well.
And I think it seems like ton of interest and energy and like doing a debrief and making sure that we participate next year and we do it bigger and better. It was such a cool thing. Thank you guys for your leadership. Thank you for inviting the city to be a partner on Week Without Driving.
We just had a big debrief yesterday for the 4 co-host organizations. And we're planning on planning as early as June next year. So we'd love to get some more events going on, but like, thank you to the city. You guys really stepped up for a lot of what went on that week.
Yeah, it was really great to see like city officials, their social media and online presence with it, the stories being released throughout the week. It was really cool to see.
Excellent. All right, thank you, Eric. Let's move to Jacqueline.
Hello, I'm with Allegheny County Economic Development, in case someone doesn't know. The Active Allegheny grant program is now open for application, and it is for bicycle and pedestrian and multimodal improvements within municipalities. And nonprofit organizations are also welcome to apply on behalf of municipalities, or municipalities can apply themselves.
All right, thank you so much. Let's move to William.
Hey there. Again, excited to be here and excited to be 1 year into the CSAG group. Excited to be able to participate in these meetings in person and virtually. Really excited to be able to participate in the site visit we did a few months ago. So thank you again to the DOMI and CSAG coordinators for this opportunity. I wanted to just share, I sit on the board of the Pittsburgh Region Clean Cities, which is federally funded from the Department of Energy, focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector. So there's certainly an overlap to the to our work in this particular group. I just wanted to say that the Clean Cities and Communities organization is composed of 75 coalitions nationwide. We have 2 in our state, which being the Pittsburgh Region Clean Cities being the one that serves our 30+ counties in Western Pennsylvania. We are currently updating our strategic plan. I'll be sharing some of those details with our coordinators at CSAG so that as we continue to have these discussions, there are other organizations that, again, adjacently serve similar needs. So I'll be able to share some of those details in the upcoming weeks as those ways for stakeholders in the public to be able to contribute and provide feedback to our strategic plan that guides our organization. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, William. Harriet?
I'm Harriet with Safe Routes to School. Last week we had our Safe Routes to School Walk and Roll to School Day. We had over 10 schools participate without the city of Pittsburgh. We had the public schools as far as charter schools and even private schools. Partnering also with by Pittsburgh, who is one of our partners who helps us out a lot. It was great for them to come out also with the mayor's office. And we also were able to have some volunteers pass out Division 0 trifolds at some of the schools. So the schools were welcoming to have us come in and help to engage. We were engaging the parents that they were dropping off their students. So we had over 10 schools that participated. So we're growing every event that we do. So we'll be back in May for the next one.
Nice. Thanks, Harriet.
I can jump in, and that I'm inspired to hear that. My name is David from Pogo Bike Share. I have a couple of things to say. Number one is that I really appreciate Eric's question about how can we strengthen this group. I think he didn't use those words, but how can we harness the power and the leadership that's in this room to better influence city decision-making at even a higher level. And Eric, I'm not sure if you were volunteering to write a letter on behalf of this group to formally submit to the budget process, but if you were, I'm happy to join in that. I think formally creating recommendations out of this group to present to the city is a really helpful next step. So if there's others who want to join, I'm maybe happy to, like, I'm not gonna lead that process, but be a part of it. And then I do want to and then secondly, next thing is to say that Lisa Frank in the mayor's office is the chief operating officer of the city of Pittsburgh, joined our board of directors in 2024 and has a really heartwarming video that we worked on her with from the week without driving, where she sort of just like let her emotions out to say that you know, finding a way to get to work at the city that didn't involve her car sort of unlocked a new level of being in love with the city of Pittsburgh. And it was a really touching moment for me. And I just wanted to, again, we already sort of gave a round of applause, but for everyone who participated in the week without driving, it really was an excellent use of our time. I hope that we can continue to do it bigger and better next year. And then lastly, maybe just kind of give one moment of really sincere big up to the city. It's not very often that I'm able to look cool in the eyes of my children. Shocking. And over the past like few weeks, I've been able to do that in two different ways. In 2024, the city completed the Stanton Avenue Phase 2, which installed bike lanes and traffic calming on Stanton Avenue in the city's east end. I live in Stanton Heights. I have 5 kids. My youngest goes to school in Highland Park at Dilworth Elementary School. And almost every day in this school year, he and I have ridden bikes from our house to his school to get to school. And we're able to do that on a separated bike lane all the way down through Stanton Avenue, through parking protected bike infrastructure, onto a floating bus island, through some traffic calming intersections to his school. And then from there, I drop him off and take Collins over to what is now called Station Street in East Liberty, which is part of the Penn Circle two-way conversion. I ride on protected infrastructure all the way through East Liberty and make my way up protected infrastructure on Penn Avenue and to the Neighborway in Friendship, and make my way all the way to work in the Strip District on a bicycle. And seeing my 6-year-old son's enthusiasm about bike lanes has been a really huge joy for me, because he gets to say, "Dad, this is cool," which if you ever spend time with my kids specifically, there's very little things that I look cool in. And so I just want to say thank you. It's been a huge joy to be able to do that. It unlocked a way for us to get to school that didn't exist before. So thank you to everyone that was involved with that, DOMI and Safe Routes to School and the mayor's office and OMB for funding that. I mean, I think one thing that this committee can do is to tell stories a little bit better. And so I'm kind of throwing these things out, these kind of personal moments. The second one, I've been talking way too long, but the second example is another one of my sons who is in high school taking a history class right now that's called Urban Research and Design. It's being taught by Dr. Michael Narragon, who some of you may know. But my son came to me last week or 2 weeks ago with a homework assignment that he had to look at examples of complete streets in the city of Pittsburgh that his class had gone on a field trip to view. And the examples that he showed me were Hazelwood Green and Bigelow Boulevard between 5th and Forbes. And he said, "Dad, I have to figure out what design features are in these places and what design features we could use at other parts of the city." And I was like, I am your guy. I have been waiting for this moment. 5 kids, homework projects. This is my moment, my shining moment. And I got to say, I've been a part of the Complete Streets Advisory Group that helped to create policies, to encourage the design features and infrastructure that you are studying and that you are showing me photos on your cell phone. And so just one more way to reinforce that, working together with OMB, with the mayor's office, with the storytelling that's coming out of the mayor's office, with all the other partners in this room and everyone here, and there's so many that I can't list them all. We are truly making a difference in our city. And when we start to see those changes look cool or look exciting to children and to young people, then I feel like we really are doing something right. And so it's really exciting on the first anniversary of this group to get to say thank you. And I just want to give a round of applause to you.
Excellent. We have a few more minutes. Does anyone else want to give an update?
I think we're then going to move into the last couple of minutes here. First, I want to, on behalf of the city and especially the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, I want to thank all of you individually and your organizations, if you're representing them, for participating in CSAG. You know, if I, for bureaucrats, you know, the idea of community outreach or, you know, working really lockstep with partners or advocacy groups, I think is going to raise a natural, maybe a healthy tension or good dialogue, which needs to happen. So I think we've started to have some of those conversations this year. And what I have heard in the past couple of minutes is that you as individuals and organizations have found this venue to be helpful for you too. And really that is like the biggest thing that I could have hoped to get out of reflection from this meeting is that you guys have found value. So as we look forward to future years, you know, what are ways we can continue the city to support this venue? You know, to me, it's sounding like a tremendous amount of opportunity for our members, like non-city agencies, to start to step up in this group and maybe help run the agenda or maybe help, you know, identify topics. You know, what are the ways we can build on some of the good work that started with CSAC? So, oh, sorry, we're not going to get to Stephanie's presentation today. I don't know that we'll have time to get through this in the 3 minutes before we lose the room. We want to solicit feedback. One idea for doing that could be through a member survey. I think we want to know, you know, is the in-person format working? Do we want more meetings? If I could get some head nods, that would be really validating to us because I have felt very like stressed for time in all 4 of these quarterlies. So I think we want to build out a larger curriculum. One of the things that we didn't get to talk about today because we ran out of time was our Vision Zero updates. So last October, when this group convened for the first time, we had not fulfilled that biennial reporting obligation to council. The city had not signed on to Vision Zero as a commitment. We had not developed and publicized our high injury network. So while this group was formed, a lot of other really great things and programs got started. Out of Vision Zero, we have a group, education and communication. One of the prompts we've asked that internal city group to look at is how CSAC could also be a part of our Vision Zero program. So whether that's, you know, continuing to be a sounding board for educational material, I think that the trifold that Harriet mentioned, we distributed at our Safe Routes to School programs. That trifold was developed in part because of that team coming to this group and asking for feedback on the material that we were developing. So things like that, or if we want to, unfortunately, Jan stepped away, other ideas for how we can integrate CSAC into Vision Zero is something that we're working at in the city and also something that in the member survey, I think we'd love to have feedback or ideas from the group, what that might look like. The other thing that we really want to do better in 2025 is a member push. So we have been tracking attendance, and we've seen that our quarterly meeting attendance has been very good for our resident reps and our organizations. However, when we do the site visits or some of the extra activities, the participation from our resident reps has been a little bit lower. So I think we're interested in understanding, you know, is that a format issue or just an availability issue? Is it something else we're not aware of?
If we did like a when to meet instead of just announcing when it's gonna be.
Yeah. That's good feedback. So wanting to like hone in on that a little bit, and then also wanting to be proactive in looking for more members and more diverse membership that is going to be reflective of the city and all of the needs that we are trying to serve. So Colleen had a wonderful idea of, you know, wanting to bring a buddy to CSAG. And I think that's something that we can look at making a goal for all of our members is, you know, is there an opportunity for you to bring somebody to this group so that we can expand our reach a little bit further. So those are things that we've been thinking about in our 1 year reflection. I think there's some consistency based on what we heard from, you know, member updates, but any big reactions?
Yeah, I think maybe meetings every 2 months, then we'd get 6 a year. I don't know. If you guys want to do monthly, but maybe every 2 months. I'm sorry. I was like, I really like that we did a break, and like had a moment for coffee, restroom, cake, as opposed to having that at the end. I think that feels better, and then we can kind of go till time. I don't know what you've done for recruitment at all, so I don't, forgive me if this is redundant, but like reaching out to organizations like Casa San Jose, because I know not all their members may speak English. But like an organizer or a staff person there may be able to join, and there's a Bhutanese neighborhood group that I'm forgetting the name of. Yes, and so like just kind of reaching out and asking one of their staff people to be a part of it.
We are way too white here. This does not represent the city. We need to reach out to like orgs in J40 communities like Hill District, I forgot what they're called, but the thing in the Hill District, that's near me, things like that. But like, you know, if you look at us, we don't represent the city.
Yep.
I would kind of +1 to every comment made. I think like also kind of need to understand what exactly the mission of the group is. I think maybe that's been established, but I think a lot of it is us advocating to the city and action that you take, which I think makes sense. I think a lot of it can also be empowering everyone attending here to like know where to kind of key in the certain advocacy, where to like make change in their own program areas and communities. And you know, maybe with a few more meetings, we can cover a little bit more of those bases.
Thanks. Eric has his hand up.
Eric?
Oh, I was gonna say maybe as a counterpoint to more meetings, but maybe having like working group or like subcommittees or something like that, where people can do things in between the quarterly. You know, for instance, like I'm happy to step up and help facilitate this letter that we were talking about, if that's appropriate, but I don't know if that's appropriate. I don't know like sort of the process for that to like get the sign on from the committee. Like, you know, I think I would definitely need some assistance with, you know, Domi, you know, on all that, what that looks like, you know, like kind of like the logistics of that, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. And I think this will be a good a test case for us for Domi to sort of be a facilitator. So what I'm thinking, Eric, is that we'll do meeting minutes as always. We'll share out and summarize our member updates because they were really phenomenal this meeting. And, you know, for people who are promoting events, we want to make sure those dates get shared. And in addition to that, Domi will lead in scheduling a time for the committee to maybe meet without Domi. That to me would seem appropriate to discuss, you know, your preparation of a letter, the contents, and then we'd be happy to help you as much or as little in drafting that and give you guidance on how it gets signed off or endorsed. But I think, allowing the members to meet maybe without Domi could really be a good thing at this stage. So look for all of that from us soon. Thank you all. We're over time. And yeah, we'll be in touch. Jeff, anything else to add?
I'd just like to say, this is one of the main things that I do here at the city. And so thank you all for your participation and making this group meaningful.